Welcome to Liberty Chats. My name is Lindsey Martin, and I am a member of the Steamboat Institute's Emerging Leaders Council. The Institute is a conservative organization based out of Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and we are dedicated to promoting the values of freedom, liberty, and civil dialogue. I am so excited about our guest on today's episode. Elisha Krauss is a conservative commentator, writer, and podcaster. Currently, she is a host of the Washington Examiner Newsmaker Series. Previously, she was a co-host and a contributor at the Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire. She previously hosted a morning drive radio show in California with Shapiro for 4 years and produced the syndicated Sean Hannity Radio Show for 7 years. Elisha has also worked with Truth Revolt as a grassroots organizer and writer, and as PragerU's director of outreach. And on top of all of that, she ran a congressional campaign in her home state of Oklahoma. Krauss grew up in the southern part of the state and was raised as a homeschool middle daughter, coming from an entrepreneurial mom and a father with a long military service history and a corporate pilot. She moved to New York City at the age of 18 to attend college and became the youngest radio producer at ABC during her freshman year before dropping out to pursue a media career full-time. Her media appearances include NBC, MSNBC, Fox News, Newsmax, and more. She has a special place in her heart for radio and podcasting. Elisha resides in California with her husband and 3 daughters, which we have to note they were all born at home. So after that amazing lineup of a lot of things, Elisha, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I need to add that to that too. I joke with people, I'm very conservative, small government minded, so much so that it was part of my decision making behind having home births. And I have friends all across the spectrum. I'm kind of dabbling in being a doula now. I've doulaed 6 births and I haven't officially been certified. I've been like a friend doula to people and to women actually, because people can't have babies, only women can. And first thing I said today that'll get me canceled. And but yeah, I was laying in bed the other night. I'm like, I should actually be certified, and then I can add that to my bio, and it'll be super fun to do podcasts. Is there any other political commentator out there that is also a certified doula? I don't think so.
What else can she do, especially being in the state of California? I think that makes you more than a triple threat. That's a lot more.
I can jam. I've learned how to jam. We have lots of beautiful citrus here, and it's I can make some mean kumquat marmalade. But other than that, I am kind of living a metropolitan life. I mean, we live, I guess, in the suburbs of LA. LA is a sprawling metropolis. It's very different than Chicago or New York City or even Miami, that has a very condensed kind of mass. The average commuter in Los Angeles drives 30 miles. I'm 30 miles from LAX, but it could take me an hour to get there. And LA is also, it's the second largest media market in the country. And of course, historically incredibly liberal. But I think that COVID has been very interesting in how even my liberal friends are now maybe squeaking to the center a little bit and recognizing the importance of local politics. Not just who's at the top of the ballot and how that affects their freedoms and their daily lives.
So let's just jump right into that, because you mentioned a really good point and something that you share, that during these past 2 years with what happened, COVID and just various things, a lot of people have been moving out of California, coming to the central part of the country, and we are seeing it on a national scale of them coming in. But you have chosen to stay. And I think that that's a really crucial point. So will you share more about your, experiences and why you are like, hey, we need to stay here because you can make a difference there?
Yeah, I hope we can make a difference there. And that's what I want to try to do. And I think it's multi-pronged. My husband and I are Christians, and he said right in the height of the riots and protests and LAPD copters circling around our house, as well as a wildfire that caused this weird apocalyptic orange sky, and we were stuck inside with our air filters on in the middle of a lockdown, and my sister's business being, ransacked and vandalized, where we're like, wait, what are we doing here? Why are we here? And a lot of our friends leaving, our friends in the conservative circles, our friends in Christian circles, our friends in professional circles that aren't even political, of people just being like, whoa, I'm out of here. And I think people need to understand too, Los Angeles is a very transient city in general. It's a lot like New York, of which I spent 7 years of my adult life. People come for a year or two and then they leave just because of the dreams or activities or careers that they're pursuing that might not pan out, and they decide that it's better to get married, go home, and be able to buy a house for $150,000 instead of $1 million. So we are kind of used to people having different seasons and meeting people and befriending people and having people in our community that aren't going to stick around forever, right? But it was hard because a lot of people that we knew and loved were leaving or had left. And my husband was like, listen, we're not going to flee because of fear, but we're not going to stay because of pride. And we consistently check in with one another, and we're like, hey, you good? I'm good. Okay. Yeah. And we haven't felt this urge to leave. We haven't felt called to leave. And so we're like, for now, we're going to stay and fight. And in the infamous words of Jerry Brown, a horrible governor of the state of California, he used to say, as goes California, so goes the nation. And I said this in a speech last week to some Simi Valley Republican women, many of whom, like, kudos to them, are staying and fighting and running for local offices and really want to implement change for their businesses and their families on a local level. And that is so important. And if you feel called to do that, do it. I get it's not as glamorous as running for Congress or Senate or governor, but those races are key. School board races, crucial. County supervisors, vital. Even parks and rec boards, do it because it matters. Like, everything that happens on your local level with these mandates and crap really depends on who's leading in your area. Sorry, that was a rabbit trail side rant for a moment. But what I told these women, and I truly believe, and Jerry Brown unfortunately was right, as goes California, so goes the nation. Culturally, financially, politically, with EPA regulations, with how things are handled with immigration, abortion, energy, education. And it could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, it could be 20 years down the road. Running away from California, running away from New York City, running away from Chicago and Detroit and all of these liberal meccas does not do anything to put up a boundary and put up a fight and draw a line in the sand and say, no more. Not just for me and my generation, but for my daughters and my grandkids. And I think conservatives and small government-minded people with principles need to stop looking at, oh, this next election, yay, we're going to win some seats in 2022. What's going to happen in 2024? Stop thinking of every 2 years of an election cycle. Think generationally.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Something too, that I have, just by what you have shared about what your state is going through, and we have seen it through these past 2 years, is that there's a big difference. You can definitely tell the parties in a state based off of what you are seeing with the vaccine and the mask rules, mandates, the crime, issues, and just various things that thankfully people like me who are not in that state or are not under leadership that are, letting these kinds of things happen. I am living in a very different world. So can you share more about, especially you have been sharing great things about what kids are going through, because they are still made to wear masks while they are in school, and how that affects them on several levels. So could you just share more about that?
Yeah. I was a homeschool kid. As you mentioned in my bio, my mom homeschooled us while running a small business, being the chairwoman of our county Republican Party and running for office a couple of times even. I don't know how she did it all. Maybe because she's ADD and she could, multitask, but really well. But we're here in Los Angeles and our daughters were previously in school, in a private school, and pulled them out during COVID and chose to homeschool because I had an early reader. I was also educating our niece at the time, who had been distance learning and really fallen behind. And I was like, I joke with people that I use screen time as a babysitter so I can do podcast interviews like this.
Yes.
With the kids on Netflix so I can talk to lovely ladies like yourself and have a hopefully quiet 30 minutes of uninterrupted talk time. I don't need my kids on a screen for 8 hours a day with 5-minute bathroom breaks and this weird lunch break and then homework on top of it. I didn't want that. And it's kind of fascinating that the American Pediatric Association used to be like, no screen time under 2, very limited screen time over 2. Like they'd always release these reports of how much screen time American elementary school students were getting and how bad it was. Haven't seen those reports in the last couple of years, have we? But there's decades of evidence showing that screen time for children is bad. Additionally, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I've seen personally, despite the fact that we've tried to go out and live our lives and we host a lot of people, we don't make a mask in our house and never have, I've seen social kind of delays in my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old because they're not used to situations where mommy takes them to the grocery store and they have to stay with mommy, right? They're not used to interacting. Children, especially under the ages of 5 and under, learn their communicative and emotional sensory skills and even are able to judge and discern people by being able to see their face. And when you do this with a child, not only for the average 5 and under, but think about the kids in the foster system. Think about the kids in abusive situations. If they are able to even go to a public school that's quarantined and then not, and then closed and then not because of some cases and not, they're prohibiting that child from developing a trust factor with someone that is a mandatory reporter. If you're an 11-year-old girl in an abusive situation and you've been out of school for a year and then you're thrust into a new school, how are you going to develop a level of trust with a teacher, let alone like a male teacher whose face you can't see and they can't see you? It goes both ways. I believe that there are good and caring teachers out there, but how are they supposed to connect with a kid whose face they also can't see and can't read? And I think so communicatively, emotionally, like educationally, it has been incredibly damaging. And we're seeing like people, deaf children and adults, people on the autism spectrum, how bad it's been for them. Early communication skills with kids 5 and under, how delayed they are. It's like a over 300% increase in delays for this generation. And I mean, some people laughed about it, but there was even a study that was done that children, toddlers between the ages of 2 and 4 during the early lockdown watched so much Peppa Pig that they started to pick up fake English accents, like British accents. And people were like, haha, my 2-year-old does this. And I'm like, actually, no, that's not okay. That's scary that they are hearing and learning from a television character more than they are a preschool teacher or their community around them or fellow friends their own age. Socially, educationally, emotionally, it has been so damaging for kids. And time after time, we've seen pediatricians and doctors speak out and say, we don't have data to show how bad it's going to be. Unfortunately, we're going to be realizing that in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yes. And I think even before all of this started, studies showed that middle school, high schoolers have challenging times with even having a one-on-one conversation because
that was pre-COVID,
they
just
are
because of social media. Yep.
And so on top of that, and then younger, kids having those kinds of like challenges, it just layers on so many different things. And it's going to be late when we finally see that, okay, these kids are having major challenges and how do we kind of rail it in?
A woman that I follow on Twitter, and she's Andrew Clavin's daughter. Her first name is Faith. I just went blank on her last name, but you could find her via Andrew because he retweets her all the time. She's a writer and editor in New York City with children and has chosen to stay in New York City, and kudos to her for doing that. And I don't even think that she would have identified as conservative pre-COVID, but she's seen how these lockdowns have been so damaging. And I think the response of a lot of people will say to me or the Bethany Mandells or the Mary Catherine Hams of the world are like, well, my kids wear a mask and they don't complain, or my kids seem to be fine, or my kids are okay. My kids aren't, my kids aren't delayed. And it's like, just because your kids aren't expressing to you something doesn't mean that they're not feeling it. Especially if they're, I mean, really, when you were 14 years old and you were having a hormonal breakdown during puberty, were you really able to explain to your mother what was going on, or how the clique at school hurt you and how you were afraid that you wouldn't get asked out to prom? And like, would you even have wanted to say that? Because you wouldn't want her like motherly advice because she's not cool anymore. Now take a 4-year-old who isn't even able to process those emotions. They're just upset about something and they're wanting to comply and appease their elder or their parent or their caretaker, right? It is idiotic to think that just because the kids aren't saying something, that they're totally okay with what we've done to them.
And when they put on a mask, that makes it easy for them to hide how they feel. I have seen kids who I can tell it's a comfort thing of either they're always wearing it, or, oh, I don't want to talk, or I don't want to this, especially teenagers. They kind of use that as a way of like, okay, well, if I'm wearing it, I don't have to talk. And so it's those kinds of things too that,
it's like between the phone and the mask, if you're an introverted or socially anxious teenager, even pre-COVID, why would you ever want to remove that? And I remember reading a piece, I want to say it was like Huffington Post or Slate in early COVID, where they were talking about, hey, we have to be careful about this masking thing because people who are depressed and like suicide prone are naturally like their depression lies to them about how they're all alone and nobody cares. And when they're hiding behind a mask and an electronic device, that's just feeding into the lies that their depression is telling them, pushing them towards self-harm or suicide. And we need to be cautious of this, and people in the medical community. And, I mean, what happened to us caring about mental health? There was a whole thing about the Me Too movement and caring about the underdogs and the lesser thans and the women and the minorities and those who couldn't speak up for themselves. And I really think, I was ranting to my husband about this the other day, there's a really fine line where we went from, oh, hey, we must train volunteers and teachers to look out for sexual predators and not touch children and teach them about bodily autonomy. But then we see video after video and hearing teachers saying, no, your parental rights don't matter. And yes, I forced a mask on a 6-year-old girl. How are you supposed to teach a little girl that an adult is not supposed to touch her, but then they're forcibly doing this thing to her? I think I don't know. I'm afraid of what is going to happen to this future generation, and my heart hurts for these children. There's a video I posted on my Instagram stories today, and it's a classroom of Israeli students that are cheering and ripping off and throwing away their masks when they were told they don't have to wear masks anymore. And everybody else that was posting it was like, isn't this amazing? Look at how happy they are. And I'm like, look at how happy they are, and look at the 2 years of their life that we have stolen from them. It actually was heartbreaking to me. And then I thought of all of the other kids in the world that are still forced into these unscientific situations and classrooms that are a detriment to their well-being.
So kind of on the flip side of that, did you see the video that I saw that was being shared of kids in Canada saying that they wanted, what were they saying? That they like wanted kids or like people to get in major trouble if they did not get vaccinated. Did you see that?
No.
Okay, you have to find it. Anyways, I wanted to ask your thoughts because you did share about what did you think about the news of Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer retiring? I just wanted to get your thoughts. Do you have anything on that?
I guess a part of me wasn't surprised. I think I pissed off people on all sides of the aisle because I was like, hey, remember when there was that really important special election in Georgia and then Trump started calling into question the election results, and then Georgia Republicans who voted for Trump didn't get out. We know this by the numbers, and didn't vote. I mean, the same thing happened in California. I'm perturbed at all the Trump voters that turned out in 2020 to vote for him, but then didn't turn out and vote for Larry Elder or Kevin Kiley or anybody else in the Gavin Newsom recall. Where were you guys when stuff mattered? And so I think, unfortunately, what a leader of the Republican Party or what a leader, whether president or former, of the free world says matters. And I voted for the guy. But I remember sitting there and just being like, shush, we need these Senate seats. We need every seat that's possible. Obviously, Breyer is a left-leaning justice. Obviously, Biden's going to replace him with another left-leaning justice. But when we have like the Cinemas, the Mansions, the Collins, and we could have had a Republican senator from Georgia helping us solidify, it really could have helped us push for a more moderate and less radical nominee. But look at the way that Biden has been going. We don't have that chance anymore. And so, yeah, I kind of went off on this and I upset people on all sides because they're like, oh, it doesn't matter. It was going to be a leftist anyway. And I'm like, but it didn't have to be that radical. Like it didn't have to be this litmus test of the Kamalas and the Schumers of the world. It could have been someone more along the lines of someone that would be approved by a Collins or a Manchin or a Cinema, and I definitely would have preferred that. Or hey, maybe even delayed to post the election had we had a closer Senate vote. But races matter, guys, and not just the big ones in the presidential years and not just at the top of the ticket.
And that's really crucial that you said those things regardless of which, side that you stand on, because I think that's when we really start to work together, when both sides can say, yeah, we should have done more. We could have done more. So bravo for saying what needs to be said and not just being like, well, I stand on this side.
Yeah.
So kind of shifting from a lot of the current topics, I wanted to get more about your personal experiences, especially because you have taken an incredible journey of leaving your home stay at such a young age, dropping out of college, but then being a radio producer, and you've worked on television and you've done so many various things. And because we have a lot of younger people who are on our Emerging Leaders Council and who listen to this, can you share about takeaways, lessons that you've learned? Because politics is a very crazy world and you've experienced a lot of sides to it. What are just some things that you think of from those times that would be good for younger people to hear?
Yeah, I think in life, whether you're in politics or any other career, which we do need like-minded people to go into other careers, and more power to you if you do. I have an 8-year-old who's very interested in STEM, and I just can't wait for her to be the conservative in STEM one day, because conservative women in STEM are the most ostracized. I get comments from them all the time that are like, I can't publicly comment because I work for X, Y, and Z company in the Bay Area. But so more power to you. But if politics is your passion and that's going to be your purpose and your profession, good for you. I think that these tips could apply to people in all walks of life, though. Make sure you have a core group of friends around you, and it's about the quality of those friends, not the quantity. And I would also say that it's about that your core principles are the same as those people. It doesn't have to be that you agree on 100% of the issues, because you're not going to agree on 100% of the issues. I have friends in life that were Bernie Sanders supporters, but I've known them since I was 18 years old, and they know me, they know my heart. I know them, I know their heart. They're good people. And so you just want to surround yourself with good people, and who are going to go beyond those political disagreements and support you in what you do and the challenges that you experience. Try to find a mentor. Try to find a mentor in a field that has done what you want to do or is currently doing what you want to do. Don't be afraid to start small. I get a lot of emails. It's like, I want to be the next Sean Hannity. I want to be the next Ben Shapiro. How do I do that? And I'm like, one, you can't, because they're one of a kind. But that's okay, because I think that there's room in the marketplace for more than just those voices. And then two, you're not going to wake up tomorrow with 500 syndicated radio stations across the nation and the #1 conservative podcast in the country. Turns out it took Ben a long time to get there, and he deserves it, and it's great. Sean deserves it, and it's great. But you don't just go from like college student to that. There's writing for next to nothing. There's doing free speeches. There's volunteering on the ground. There's getting to know people in grassroots. So don't be afraid to start small and build up from there. That's also a good thing, because then it helps you really determine what you want to do, because what you think you want to do you might not be good at it. This is the Mike Rowe argument, right? Like, he wanted to be a builder, but he wasn't good at being a builder. And so he had to go figure out what he was actually good at. And sometimes what you might want to do might not be what you're good at. And you have to be willing to make that sacrifice for yourself and for your family. My mama always said, she's like, treat everyone the same. And whether it was, a prime minister or a mailroom worker, I've always strived to do that. My other tip would be, somebody asked me this the other day on Twitter, actually, and it kind of clicked. I was like, cliques are not cool in middle school, and they're not cool in a professional setting. So and I'm not like, oh, you have to include everybody and be friends with everybody. I'm not like that social justice-y. Like, you can have a best friend, or you can have like a coworker that you like hang out with and all that stuff, but just be aware of how you act in a professional space and how cliquey you are, especially as you experience success and maybe are in a leadership position, of how that affects others and the negative effects that can have on yourself and others. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that it should be about the principle and not the person, because you could have the coolest boss ever and they'll probably end up failing and disappointing you. You could have a professor that you think is awesome and he'll probably end up failing and disappointing you. Or you could have a political candidate or commentator or speaker or TV host or podcaster that you love and adore that will end up disappointing you. And so those moments could be life altering and crushing when those people disappoint you, but not if your purpose and your core beliefs are solid and in the right space. So just make sure that you have those things in the right space, because life is going to throw a ton of crap at you and we're never prepared for it. And you just got to push through and hope you learn a lesson, and that those challenges make you stronger.
Well, those are very good tips. So I really hope that if we have any millennials, I'm a fellow millennial, or any Gen Zers listening.
Those youngins that are telling me not to do my side part anymore.
Oh my goodness. I have like learned that, there was a point that I was like, oh, I'm not too many years out of college. I can still relate to the younger generation. And now I'm seeing there are some clear divisions, that it's okay. We are a little bit different, which is totally fine. But I do see that now.
That's funny. Yeah, I am never, as the mom of three with the mom pouch, I'm never giving up high-waisted, y'all. Like, I'm never giving it up.
No, and all of the crop tops. What is up with all of the crop tops and not any normal length tops?
We're not all Hailey Bieber, okay? We can't all pull it off. Like, why?
Yes. Hey, so one more question that I have, and just trying to figure out how to segue into it, but it does have to do with women. And you are so passionate about speaking on the pro-life issues, feminism too. Feminism is a very interesting topic that I experienced during college. And I thought that I was a feminist, even though I consider myself a conservative, but that was because I had very biased professors that taught things in a certain way that I was like, well, yes, women this, and yes, women that, and things are not fair. But thankfully, I had experiences that I was like, I think it's a little distorted on the understanding and what's actually the case. So those are kind of two separate topics, but based off of your experiences and different conversations that you've had, could you share more about how you are passionate on those topics?
Yeah. I would say, if you believe in the original dictionary definition of feminism, because I think they keep trying to change it to shift towards the more liberal, woke LGBTQ aspect. Like, they even changed that, like, a man can be a feminist now. I'm like, okay. I would say that by the original definition of like, what our founding fathers said, of all men are created equal, then yes, I think that we should be created equal. But I also believe in the feminism that notices but celebrates the difference of the sexes. And I use sex because that's the scientific definition. Gender is a social construct. So I don't like to use the phrase gender. So I love to give a speech about like why the differences of men and women are so beautiful and should be celebrated, but we can do that while treating people equally. Yeah, I've experienced chauvinism and sexism and harassment and a host of other things, but thank God I don't think that that is rampant in the United States. And if you look at where American women have come, we've made incredible strides. And, you know, the God bless the women before us that helped make those strides. But this is still the best nation in the entire world to be a woman. And I think that if you are a true feminist, we should be allowing men to be a part of our alliance, not diminishing who they are. We should be empowering them to be the way that I think God made them to be. And that helps us be who we're supposed to be. And I think that that is true feminism. And I also think if you label yourself a feminist, you should definitely be pro-life, because it is a female superpower to be able to co-create, grow, and sustain human life. And the abortion industry and Planned Parenthood want to take away that superpower from women. And that in itself is anti-feminism.
Mm-hmm. So before we finish, is there anything else that you would like to share about what you currently have happening with projects or anything else that you'd like to discuss?
No, just check out my rants on all of my social media, and be sure to go to yaf.org, because if you're on a college campus and there's a YAF group on your campus, or college Republicans, they will sponsor me to come out to speak to you. I love to travel the country. Going out next week to speak at Grove City College in Pennsylvania on why women need to carry guns. It's one of my favorite topics, and would love to come speak to you. I love to help and engage with young people, so feel free to shoot me a message and ask me questions. I'm an open book, whether it's home birth or living in LA or relationship advice or political questions.
Well, in our world, it is so crucial to be vocal now more than ever, to not hold back, besides being censored and all of those other things. So Elisha, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
So to our listeners, if you have enjoyed today's discussion, please share and subscribe and leave us a review. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, or on the web.